Councillor Carlson, can you hear us in chamber?
Hello, I can.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome everybody to the Governance Standing Policy Committee. I have two different clocks telling me different times, but that one says 1:30. So Mr. Westerson, are we good to go?
We are good to go.
All right, so let's get us started. It is the last scheduled council or committee meeting for the year, so I am sure many of the staff would like us to get this one done and in the bag for the year, yeah. All right, so let us begin. We'll start with a roll call, Mr. Westerson.
Thank you. Councillor Carlson.
Present.
Councillor Schmidt-Rempel.
Here.
Councillor Crowson.
Present.
Councillor Middleton-Hope is on a leave, and I do not see any of your colleagues. You have several members of administration here.
But we have quorum, so we can continue on. All right, I will begin then with the acknowledgement statement. The City of Lethbridge acknowledges that we are gathered on the lands of the Blackfoot people of the Canadian Plains and pays respect to the Blackfoot people past, present, and future, while recognizing and respecting their cultural heritage, beliefs, and relationship to the land. The City of Lethbridge offers respect to the Métis and all who have lived on this land and made Lethbridge their home. All right, we move now to the consent or to the adoption of the agenda. Councillor Carlson, we are going to make one suggestion. Well, there's actually two things. One, if the committee doesn't mind, we're going to move 6.5 and 6.6 first on the agenda, just because that way those staff members can get on and anyone involved with that can move on, because I think those ones are going to be relatively short. Are you okay with that, Councillor Carlson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And is there anything else, Mr. Westerson?
And we also have to add a couple of things, which is going to take us a few minutes just to add on. Mr. Westerson.
SPC meeting, there are two documents that will be added to item 6.1.1. One is a Word document, text document with regards to the overlap and cost benefit of service and support for BCCs, and the other is a table that compares the various recommendations and models. If it pleases committee, and we add those to the agenda, it'll take us a quick recess in about 3 minutes to republish that.
So, Councillor Carlson, that is your motion. Be it resolved that the agenda of the Governance Standing Policy Committee meeting of December 17, 2024 be adopted as amended. Councillor Carlson, are you okay with that?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate those documents being added.
Okay. Question's been called. All in favour? Perfect. There's a delay with Councillor Carlson. Maybe it's the illness.
It's my brain, nothing else.
All right. We will then take a quick recess while Mr. Westerson and his team add the Okay, I'm going to call us back to order as those documents have been uploaded and everything is online, and we have copies here as well. Thank you, Mr. Westerson, for getting us all of that information. We move now to the adoption of the consent agenda. Be it resolved that the minutes of the Governance Standing Policy Committee meeting held on November 28, 2024 be approved, and the Chair and City Clerk Designate be authorized to sign the same. And further be it resolved that the status of initiatives for December 17, 2024 be received as information. This motion is yours, Councillor Schmidt-Rempel.
Thank you very much. I took a look through these. I'm imagining both of my colleagues have also taken a look through these. If nobody has noticed any changes or any errors, I would call for the vote.
I don't see any hand up online. Question's been called. All in favor? And consent agenda passes. So that moves us then to 6.5. This is
Sorry.
Yes,
Madam
Councillor
Chair,
Carlson.
I did have a question. I'm sorry. It's not really germane to the minutes of the meeting, but it does show the minutes often reflect any of our colleagues that join, but it doesn't show when they leave. I'm just wondering if that's something that matters to anyone else. Like it
Mr.
just
Westerson,
says,
best practices?
I'll have to review that, Councillor Carlson. I believe that we endeavored to add that to the minutes of all council and SPC meetings, so my apologies if we did miss that.
okay, thank you.
Okay. Did we vote on those? Yeah. All right, then we move on to 6.5. We have Acting Mayor Carlson as the mover of this Old Man Watershed Council report. This is a submission from Mr. Kaup. As requested, he has brought forward a report on the Old Man Watershed Council for information. And as with all the reports now, we should be receiving these on an ongoing basis as needed as well. Councillor Carlson, the motion is be it resolved that the Governance Standing Policy Committee recommend that Council, 1, accept the report for information, and 2, continue to support and actively participate in partnership with the other primary stakeholders to benefit our watershed through the work of the Old Man Watershed Council. Acting Mayor Carlson, any?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the report, especially prior to Mr. Kaup. I was our representative on the OWCC. Or OWC, and I appreciate him taking that and stewarding that. So if there's nothing further, I'll call for the vote.
And I'd like to add my thanks as well, Mr. Kaup. It was a thorough report. The Old Man Watershed Council does a great deal more than I think the public recognizes, so it's nice to have the report before us. So when we hear about them in the news, we can certainly inform people of all the great work that you are doing on the council, and that we have the reports to be able to show what the City of Lethbridge is doing on the council as well. So thank you, and Ms. Frank as well, for all that information there, because I'm sure both of you had your hand in the creating of that report, so we appreciate it. And on that, the question's been called. All in favor? All right, that passes. Now you guys can get back to work and keep doing the great work you're doing. And then we move now to 6.6, the 2024 Combative Sports Commission report. We had a report there from Travis Grindle outlining similarly all that Combative Sports has been working on. I have a motion from Councillor Schmidt-Rempel. Be it resolved that the Governance Standing Policy Committee recommends that Council accept the 2024 Combative Sports Commission report as information. Councillor Schmidt-Rempel.
Thank you very much. Again, that was a very thorough report, and it was interesting to see some of the things that our Competitive Sports Commission works on. I know I certainly learned a lot from it. If I don't have any questions or comments from other members of this committee, I would call for the vote on this as well.
Okay. And I also understand from Mr. Westerson that right now members of the committee are actively working with the province today. They're meeting with the province, just so give an extra update on that if we can.
That is my understanding. I'll look to Ms. Klesinger if there's any additional information, but I understand that the chair and Mr. Grindle are in Calgary, I believe, currently meeting with the minister with regards to combative sports.
So even though their report is for us, they are off doing even more active work on the committee's behalf. Oh.
I do have 2 members of the Rec and Culture staff who are available to answer any questions.
All right. Thank you. Are there any questions? I know the motion's been made and we're a little backwards on that, but I don't see any questions. We do greatly appreciate it coming forward and catching up, and also catching the public up on all the great work that the commission is doing. And with that, question's been called. All in favor? Perfect. And we thank you guys for showing up as well, and you can get back to your regularly scheduled work. All right, which moves us to the beginning of the agenda, review of boards, commissions, and committees. If this seems familiar to anyone, this is the third time before us over the fall. It is at this time a submission. We just had 2 extra documents. Councillor Carlson or Acting Mayor Carlson, can you confirm that you received by email the 2 documents?
I have them in front of me.
Okay.
Madam Chair, thank you.
Perfect.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
if I can just ask, I'm so sorry to jump in, but I can't see the audience. I didn't know if anyone from the public was there to see previous ones or anything forthcoming, but I know we usually invite members of the public to speak. I just thought I'd check.
Mr. Westerson, I see Historic Places Advisory Committee here, Animal Welfare here, and Reconciliation Lethbridge Advisory Committee, and staff from Heart of Our City. I think I've covered everyone who's in the room.
I believe that's correct. And Councillor, as this has been at SPC a few times already, and I guess at the will of the chair and the committee, if there is any additional information that other speakers who have not spoken already would need to present, that would be the practice that has been employed with SPCs or is continued employed. I don't think committee would like to regurgitate the October meeting.
No, this is here to get, as you said, any information anyone hasn't provided, and for if committee is ready to make any decisions. Does that work for the other 2 members of the committee? If we work with that as sort of the understanding of how we'll move ahead. Okay, perfect. So we will then open it up to questions from committee. If they have any questions of staff at this point that they haven't yet had a chance to get asked with the new documents as well. Or again, we do have some members of different committees here. If you have any questions of committees, once the questions are done, then we'll look at deliberating. Okay, Councillor Schmidt-Rempel.
Thank you very much. Since this is the first time I see members from the Reconciliation Lethbridge Advisory Committee in our gallery, I'm wondering if they could answer a few questions or at least share their perspective on what they think of the proposed transition to an administrative committee.
All right, please come up to the microphone. Make sure you introduce yourself, not that we don't know who you are, but so that we can get it in the record. And then if you would mind answering the councillor's questions.
Cindy Crane, co-chair Reconciliation Lethbridge.
And I'm Echo Novak, Indigenous Relations Department.
Perfect. Go ahead, councillor.
So really, because we haven't had anybody from Reconciliation Lethbridge at this committee before speaking to this particular recommendation, I'm wondering where the Reconciliation Lethbridge Advisory Committee is at in transitioning to an administrative committee. For, against, any concerns, anything you'd like to share? I would imagine that you've spoken about this at the committee.
We have, and this has been a topic that we've had previously at the committee level, and we understand the direction that the administration wants to go in, and if it is the will, then we will definitely follow and continue to support however we can.
I agree with what Cindy has said. I think the most important thing is that the connection with the city and the community is together, that reconciliation carries on. And I think the only downfall of this would be that the council wouldn't be in attendance, but we of course invite everybody to attend anyways.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Okay, any further questions from either of my colleagues? All right. What I have done is I went through the motion as presented in whenever we first had the motion presented, and I've gone through and divided it into a bunch of different groups. And so I am going to request that we divide the motion, and I will bring forward the various motions as we have them. Councillor, Mr. Westerson, do you have that document that we can share with my colleagues?
Yeah, we can certainly email it out, and I believe the team is just bringing up and on the screen, I think the
Perfect.
first one you want, you're looking at 6.1 with the majority of the items.
Right. Some of the recommendations that came forward were ones that I thought we could go with the original that I assumed, being that the first one is the ones that were legislated to have, we have to keep. Like, so there's a couple in there. There are a few that I have questions about. Historic places did say that administrative would work. Reconciliation Lethbridge did say administrative would work. Like, none of these are guaranteed, but these are the ones I thought might move forward as they were. The one that I'm not sure about, and I have a question right now, number 9, Mr. Lowen. I know that came forward as an admin recommendation. Is that still an admin recommendation, the Community Requirements Appeal Board? It's quasi-judicial. We haven't seen this before. Before we pass, like, if we talk about this motion as a whole, I would just like to have more information on that one, and if that is still being recommended, or if there is another way we're going to be approaching that.
From the regulatory services staff that support that committee, they can continue to support it either as a council committee.
So this is not animal welfare, it's number 9, the Community Requirements Appeal Board, which is a brand new one that came from admin. Is that still one that admin is seeing as an essential one to move forward on? We did not question this much when it first came forward to
Oh,
us.
I see, yeah. As far as I know, the plans are still to bring that forward. As you know, from this term, any type of order under the MGA that's issued has to have an appeal to council unless it's delegated to a committee, and currently that means it's heard by all of council. It would certainly be more efficient to create a quasi-judicial standing committee of some kind that could hear those kinds of appeals so that it wouldn't have to be in front of council as a whole.
And would this be standing committee, ad hoc? I guess we didn't question this one much because we were working on the other ones when it first came forward. The idea here is, because we've only seen really one appeal in this term, so would this be an active one, or how does it work in other communities?
A lot depends upon, obviously, in your larger communities like Edmonton and Calgary, there's many appeals and of different kinds of appeals. They even create under bylaws different kinds of hearings that could hear those appeals. In terms of here, you're as familiar with the tempo here as not. I'd defer to the clerks in terms of any other thoughts about this, but certainly if we were to issue any orders under the MGA, whether that relate to any existing bylaws or anything else, those appeals would come here. Typically, that would also include the weed appeals that we would have through our community, but the details would be just sorted out in a bylaw that would need to be created for that thing. It's challenging because, as you said, there's not very many appeals, but it should, in my view, probably be a standing committee so that it's always ready in case there is an appeal.
Okay. So this would say, if this recommendation goes forward and council approves it, this would say create the bylaws, and through the bylaw creation, the discussions would be more in-depth about what this actually is and what it would entail.
That's correct.
So this would just be essentially, in principle, look into this.
Yes.
Okay. Councillor Carlson, I see you just popped up. Do you have a question?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I did. It was about the same item, if you don't mind. I was curious with this one as well, creating an entirely new group. Could this not be included in the SDAB portfolio? That way we don't create a new one. We have another body that's already in place.
Oh, could be delegated. And Ms. Hilford, I believe you have some more to add as well?
Thank you, Madam Chair. That was our thinking, that we would use the same composition as a subdivision development appeal board to get some efficiencies, and they're already trained on hearings, so it would be a separate bylaw, but the composition, we could use the same people and have a bigger pool of people to draw from. Correct, David?
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we need to make any amendments into that motion? Because it looks like it's going to be a new tribunal, but what we're actually doing is creating a bylaw and assigning the work to SDAB is the thought right now. Do we just need some wordsmithing? Can't speak. Or is this enough that we understand where we're heading? Mr. Sarsfield, please come up.
I was hoping I'd get a chance to speak. So for all these recommendations, all 18 of them, there is many steps associated with each one. So whichever one you pass, we would be coming back with the next steps. So with this particular one, we would be coming back with a bylaw, which would outline what the duties were and its responsibilities and how it'd be used. And you could say the same about any other of the recommendations or motions you might be making. So I wouldn't worry too much about the details because the details will come back.
Okay, though you know the devil is in the details. All right, so if anything is recommended, it's being recommended in principle with more work to be done to get to the final solution, if those are going forward. Okay. Okay. And then 10 appointments from organizations be eliminated, and then 11. Okay. Oh, go ahead, Councillor Schmidt-Rempel.
Just going back to item number 9, then when that comes back, will that come back with associated costs? Because when we look at the sheet here, the ongoing cost to support one of these committees would be at minimum $25,000. So does that mean it would be $25,000 for SDAB and this one, or is that $25,000 separate?
Thank you for the question. It's not a hard and fast rule about 25,000 per BCC. Some take more, some take less. There's subcommittees and such like that. Depending on what committee and council decides as a whole, will determine how we're going to resource everything as clerks and whether we have to come back to council and committee for more funding for resources. It just depends. Like we can reallocate depending on if some BCs are disbanded. But we can't just say that that's 25,000 to establish that committee right now. Thanks.
So the costing will come back to us then. If it needs more funding, it will come back to us. If it needs less, it will come back to us.
Definitely.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. And then we go on to 10, as we said, appointments from nominations of organizations be eliminated. It's been hard to get those ones filled, that we get skill matrices for all the BCCs, that the size of the boards, where warranted, be reduced, and honorariums policy be amended based on feedback, and that they regularly report to us. And 15, review of stipends is already under the code of conduct review. Establish regular, at least annual elected officials to elected officials meetings with mutual partners with admin to attend, and that the city council pursue appointments to members to other external bodies. Reading through, these were the ones that I considered. Nobody had seemed to raise any issues with, so I brought back as a slate. But if there is any that people are going, you know what, I'd like to further divide off, this would be the time for that discussion. Councillor Schmidt-Rempel. Oh, you're off when they turned you on. Let's see. Go ahead, please.
I would move item 16 out. When we last met, I had the clerk's office draft a separate motion which listed who we could be meeting with, so that we actually had a listing out of that. So I would ask that that be voted on separately. And then I would also suggest that at this time we remove item 13, the honorariums for boards, committees, commissions, CC 67, council policy be amended based on the feedback received, just because council has not yet decided on their own honorariums. This was related to the council receiving honorariums, and we have yet to decide what we're doing with the council code of conduct on that. We had that removed from the code of conduct, and the code of conduct is not yet come back. So I would suggest that item 13 be removed as well.
Okay, for process, Mr. Weston or Ms. Hilford, does the council one have to go in step with the discussion on the honorarium policy?
The council, which one? Number
13, the honorariums for boards, committees, and commissions, CC 67, policy be amended based on the feedback. We have looked at honorariums for council during the code of conduct discussions, our own code of conduct. Are the two in lockstep together? Do they have to be, or are they separate
They're separate. One is for public member volunteers and one is for counselors.
So the two discussions, do we need to then remove that if the two conversations are separate, Councillor Schmidt-Rempel? Because I don't think they impact each other.
Well, it's CC 67 talks about volunteers serving, okay. Sorry, I'm just thinking, is this is public members, this is not council members? 67 is
applies
separate from
only
that?
to your public members that are appointed by council to their board, commission, and committees.
And we're,
Okay,
we're
okay.
discussing our own honorariums under our code of conduct bylaw,
Okay.
which is completely different.
So
Okay.
that's what I was reading
So
that
we'll
wrong
stick
on.
that one
Okay,
back
yep, that's
in.
fine then. Yep.
And just
16 is, I would pull out though, because I did have a full listing
You're
of that.
gonna recommend a
Yeah,
separate motion there?
I'll recommend
Okay.
a separate motion on that one.
All right. Welcome, Mayor Hagan. This might be as clear as mud right now since we're kind of doing motions on the floor. Acting Mayor Carlson, would you be okay with that slate coming forward is one motion at this point?
And thank you, Madam Chair. I'm trying to work my way through the email you sent. And so I'm trying to sort of piece it together right now. So can you just read through the numbers that you are proposing as a slate and make sure that I've got that correct?
Okay.
Well, or I can. Is
One.
it 1,
Mhm.
4, 1, 4, 6, 7, 9, 10, 11, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Is that correct?
Not 16 at this point. Councillor Schmidt-Rempel has asked that to be pulled.
Okay.
So it's 15 and 17.
Okay, thank you. And items 2, 3, 5, 8, and 12 will come back on their own? Is that
I
what I'm
already
reading?
have drafted motions for those for discussion that are different from the original. So we will be
Okay.
bringing those back, but we'll do it in pieces.
Okay. Okay, I think I understand that. Thank you.
For clarity's sake, Madam Chair, number 15 was to be removed as well?
It's just saying that we're doing it somewhere
Okay,
else.
thank you.
And we are doing it somewhere else.
But we are including then 13, 14, and 15 in this one, and 17. Okay.
Just thought, even though that seems a mess right now, I thought it was still easier than voting on each separately. Are my colleagues ready to move forward with a vote? Or do we need more time to look at those ones? Oh, can we look at it again? Just roll it down again so we can see which ones there are. So number 1, we legally have to do. That was the easiest one. Are we ready to go to a vote on that slate of motions? Acting Mayor Carlson, are you good go moving ahead? Okay. Councillor Schmidt-Rempel, you're good? And Councillor Schmidt-Rempel, would you mind making that motion? You don't have to read it all, just. Go ahead.
If none of my colleagues have any further questions on this, I will call for the vote.
Question has been called. All in favor? Passes. So that slate will move forward as recommended. Just give us a second to bring out some of the other motions that we have prepared.
Madam Chair, while that's being prepared, none of the motions are coming up on the video stream, so anyone at home can't see them. If that can be
Oh, okay.
added.
We will
Thank
look
you.
into that. Do we know why they're not coming up? Okay, perfect.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay. All right, Acting Mayor Carlson, and I'm assuming Mayor Higgin, you sent him to as well. We do have coming in your email all of the ones that have been prepared. Next one we'll work on is animal welfare. This is the motion that I've drafted, and again, open for discussion, revision, et cetera. Be it resolved that the Governance Standing Policy Committee recommend that City Council, 1, allow the Animal Welfare Committee to continue as a committee of council until Q4 2025, and 2, request the Animal Welfare Committee to present to Governance Standing Policy Committee by Q4 2025 on potential future changes to the committee. Now, this comes out of a discussion or a meeting I had, and I believe Councillor Schmidt-Rempel also met with them, and it's about their terms of reference has two parts to it. One, which is being done very effectively, which is the grants, and another part which is broader. These guys were created in 2013. I think there were some, well, when they were created, I don't think there was much thought given to how they would be supported by staff and what they would actually be effective to do. And this would allow them to continue the part that is being done very effectively, which they are doing wonderfully, but also then to be able to look as a committee at some ideas that they have. With no guarantees, when they bring it back, it may or may not be something that governance and therefore, and recommended to council or not, but to give them the opportunity to look at ideas that they as a committee have been looking around at. And so taking the idea from them, this is what I have drafted for discussion by governance at this point. So if there are any questions around the proposed motion, now is your opportunity to ask. And if there's any concerns, please also state them at this time. So Councillor Schmidt-Rempel, I'm not sure if you have something to say or if we just didn't shut your mic off.
No, I mean, I can always have something to say. I'm fully in support of this. I've been in recent conversations with them, and they've even started to work through the animal bylaw and have identified some concerns around human rights issues in the animal bylaw as it currently stands. So certainly there is some work that we can get them to do, and I would look forward to seeing what they could do over the next year. They are their duties and responsibilities to advocate, educate, and advise the community at large on the best practices of responsible pet ownership. Given that that's what we are right now doing, I think that would be a great opportunity for us to put them to work for us. So I would support this.
Acting Mayor Carlson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to any of the administration who can answer this. And my apologies, I'm trying to scroll through the cost-benefit analysis. Do we know, I did read some of the committees are costing us up to $25,000 or even more. I'm just wondering what the cost is for this, because I believe when it was first started, it was a $10,000 grant. I'm trying to remember anyways. And if it's costing us $25,000 to administer, I'd like to know that.
Okay.
I'd rather save the $25,000 and up the grants.
Okay, is there Mr. Brierly or a designate who can answer that question about how much? Okay, Ms. Hilford?
Thank you. As previously stated, 25,000 is not a hard and fast rule for each BCC. It depends on the subcommittees, any hearings, the amount of work and such. So if we did want to, as in the second chart noted, start streaming and do some other services that we're not currently doing, we would want to have 2 people in meetings and such. Currently for this committee, we only have 1 clerk along with regulatory services. So again, we'd have to see when the dust settles how many committees there would be and how we would allocate services and do another level of service chart for committee to consider.
Thank you for that. Oh,
And I was just going to say, my thought is, and I maybe didn't present it well, is that it wouldn't be part of their committee work to sit and discuss the future. It'd be part of them, like volunteers to sit and discuss it. So it wouldn't be part of their meetings. It would be something they would have to do separate from their meetings without staff there just to have those conversations.
okay. Thank you for that. Second question, and maybe Madam Chair, you or Councillor Schmidt-Rempel can answer this if no one else can, because you've had some chats. There is important work being done, agreed. But what work would not, if this did transfer to an administrative committee, what would be lost? I need to know, are we just keeping something for peace, love, and happiness? Or is there a real, oh dear, this would disappear in our community?
So when I look at their terms of reference, they do have the oversight of grants, so oversee the funding and application process of feral cat colonies within the city of Lethbridge in accordance with the care and maintenance guidelines of feral cat colonies. They do oversee the NOCA policies, so the NOCA funding, so the domestic spay-neuter program. They also oversee application process for non-veterinary funding, program for animal rescue groups, and that's organizations applying for the funding as directed by City Council. And then the duties and responsibilities that we don't have them working on right now. So in addition to the grant funding, they are going out and spending some of their own money on taking care of feral cat colonies, and they're getting out into the community to take care of some of those animals that also might be abandoned or answering questions or anything like that. So I think that's part of the advocate, educate, and advise work that they may not have had specific direction on doing.
Okay, thank you for that. I do know the terms of reference. I'm saying if it transferred to administrative, all those things would still be done, correct?
Mr. Lowen, you have something to add to this, I believe?
Yeah, I was just going to say that the thinking behind it being okay to go to an administrative committee is that all the existing work that they do under the terms of commission could still be done with the people in regulatory services, but it wouldn't need to be the public meeting supported by clerks as well. So it'd be a cost savings, but would be able to accomplish the same terms of reference. It would just cease to be a council committee. It would be administratively led and appointed and those sort of things. So it would reduce the administrative burden in administering the committee, but the function and the value that those excellent volunteers give to the city in terms of assisting us to identify and evaluate grants and work on the NOCA policy as well would continue. I don't know if either the general manager of regular services wants to add anything to that.
No. Please come forward.
Yes, no, that's you've basically hit all the points there. It is basically you've got groups of animal rescue folks who do, like you said, outside of this committee, they do fantastic work. And they, through this committee, we have come up with some programs. They have come up with some programs, such as the spay and neuter program that NOCA does, and some of these other programs that keep animals out of the shelter. And so they and my staff have done a great job in terms of doing that type of thing. So you indicated that yes, there's other stuff they do as well, and we also, the shelter works with them in terms of finding places for homes and stuff like that outside of the committee work as well. So no, it's correct that all the work that's done now could be moved to an administrative committee.
I think the reason, Acting Mayor, that we kept it as a council committee is more at the request of the volunteers. And I think some of it is we have not done a good job of explaining to many people the difference between an administrative committee and a council committee. Many people think it's sort of a hierarchy, not just a different field of expertise. And so that is why I drafted it as a continue, to give them the chance to look into the other areas. I do believe they could do what they are doing very well under administrative, but trying to respect the volunteers and what they requested is why the motion was drafted as it is. As I also had a conversation with them, one of the other difficulties of any of these committees is we have not done a good job of explaining that, you know, they can disappear at the whim of a council, that they do serve the needs of council. And one of the motions that I have arising is actually a lessons learned from having sat down with all the committees, et cetera. And one of the things I will be recommending is that council committees expire at the end of every council's term, unless the next council wishes to keep them. Because some of this is coming because we've created these committees for very important things. The volunteers have done amazing work, but we haven't had that connection back to council that have kept them as a priority for council necessarily at the same time. So some of this is our own miscommunication with committees, and so we're trying to balance, you know, the hopes, wishes, desires of the volunteers, but also the very real needs of council at the same time as we're bringing some of these revised motions forward.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I did have a chance briefly to scan the lessons learned, and I appreciate that coming forward. I think there's some great ideas there. Thank you.
All right. Any more questions on this motion? Or are we ready to move into more of a debate on it, though we have sort of been combining the two today? Okay. So knowing the motion, I assume Councillor Schmidt-Rempel, you would like to bring this motion forward? And if there are any suggested amendments, Councillor Carlson, or Acting Mayor Carlson, this would also be the time to bring those forward.
I'm in for debate. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councillor Schmidt-Rempel, if you want to open.
Just that I will support the motion as it stands. Echoing what Councillor Crowson said, respecting the request of this committee to keep them operating, to help them understand perhaps what transition to a committee of administration looks like, allowing them to continue on with the good work that they have been doing. And because we do have the animal bylaw coming up, and this is a good opportunity to put them to work for us, I would at this time like to see this committee stay intact and would ask for my colleagues' support.
All right, Acting Mayor Carlson, you're next for debate.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate the thought that went into this and the time spent meeting with committees. I wouldn't want to even intimate that there's any lack of respect or appreciation for the work our volunteers have been done. But when I get the answer from our administration that this work does cost the corporation money and going a different route will achieve the same outcomes at a greater efficiency, I just can't support moving forward, keeping something just for the sake of keeping it. It's happened so many times in our budgets over the past. We have kept funding items. I believe there was a Winter Children's Festival that was in the budget forever because it was in the budget. and no one wanted to put it on, and it needed to go away. And it just took council to say, yep, we're still achieving the same goals and outcomes for the community without that line item in the budget. And I find this very similar. Keeping something just for the sake of keeping it just doesn't make sense to me. So I won't be supporting this, even though I think the work has been awesome over the years. Thank you.
Okay, question's been called. All in favor? And opposed? So that moves forward, recommended 2-1. Okay, next motion, Mr. Westerson. All right. This one is the joint committee of the school board. And this motion comes from Councillor Schmidt-Rempel, so I'll ask her to introduce it, and then we can ask questions and discuss. Councillor Schmidt-Rempel.
There it is. Yep, so just making sure that Councillor Carlson, you've seen a copy of this then? Yep, okay. So this is that we put the disbandment of the Joint Committee of the City of Lethbridge and Lethbridge School Boards on hold at this time. Refer the matter to administration to calculate the costs and expenses associated with the joint committee meetings. We do see here an estimate of $25,000. So if that is how much it costs to have these meetings, that is fine. But what I would like to do is take this to the next joint committee meeting so that the school boards have an opportunity to take a look at this and decide whether this is something that they see value in continuing or if they would prefer to disband it. They may be interested in sharing the costs with us. I don't know, but I really think that this is an opportunity. We need to have an opportunity for them to decide which direction they want to go in. This committee is not officially established under council at this time. So really, again, it's giving them an opportunity to decide if this is something they want to move forward with. I've heard from the school boards that they do want to continue on with this committee and actually increase it to 6 times a year. But again, we hear alternatively from staff that there is time and cost concerns, so we do need to take that into consideration. Also, I think we need to put this one on hold for disbandment because there is a new superintendent for Holy Spirit, and this individual needs an opportunity to be brought up to speed on what this committee is, what it does, and whether her board feels that it's something that they want to disband. So that's where I'm at right now with this one. So I would just ask for committee to look at a recommendation of putting this on hold for now.
Okay, first question, and I'm not sure if this is Mr. Brierly, Ms. Hilford. What you're being requested to do, if this motion passes, is by January 29th, and you really would only have from the 21st to the 29th, because this would go to a recommendation to council, would give you 8 days to figure out the cost and expenses associated with this committee. Is that doable in those 8 days, or would you need more time if this moves forward? Ms. Hilford.
More time would be appreciated. We also have the election and nomination packages as well in January, but I don't know if the city manager would like to add anything.
Yeah, just listening to Councillor Schmidt-Rempel's comments about putting it on hold, I would think that would trump this, is because we would need to allow the new person to have some insight into this, and then costs and time would be directly correlated to frequency. So meeting twice a year versus 6 times a year, definitely difference in cost associated. So I think we would need to put it on hold for now. Let's let that work through and then come back with some parameters that could be used to determine cost if it was to continue. Okay. And my only other comment is, and I think Ms. Kleisinger can weigh in on this, is based on historical aspects of the committee. I think the real value was things that were new and unusual that didn't fit with a typical city committee structure, like something that might have, just by nature of what it was, come to Assets and Infrastructure Committee that speaks about planning and other aspects that would have other interest from other members of the community. So I think that would be, my understanding, is the basis for this committee to continue anyway. So.
Ms. Hilford?
Did you want to respond to that? Okay. Thank you. I just wanted to add that in the supplementary information we provided, you might not have had a chance to read it. There was a lot of information there. My apologies. The joint school does not have a terms of reference that was ever approved by council. So what we would ask for any BCCs that are continuing, that council review the mandates and ensure that mandates are clear and that the work can be done, and also bylaws be created for all these BCCs to be in compliance with the MGA.
Okay. Thank you for that. Acting Mayor Carlson, I believe you had your hand up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think I've asked this question, but I'll ask it again. Is there anything that this joint committee does that is not already done through other channels or is achieved through other channels. I know that our their admin works quite well together on school sites, et cetera. I believe Councillor Schmidt-Rempel has a motion coming forward about regular meetings that include the school board to all of council. So that is there. There's also any ability of, if council needs something, to attend a school board meeting, or if school board needs something, to attend a council or committee meeting. So I'm just wondering what this joint committee achieves that's not already achieved.
All right, a bit of a philosophical question.
Not really. It's basically, is this again a feel good? But it's really not necessary. It's just an extra meeting.
Mr. Brierly, do you want to take that on from the admin perspective?
Thank you.
Yeah, I think Ms. Gehring actually on planning and school sites and so forth is more qualified to speak to that aspect than anybody here, so I'll defer to her.
Go ahead, Ms. Gehring.
So thank you, Councillor Crowson and Councillor Carlson. Admin does work very well together, both in regards to the school siting and also the joint use agreement. We are working on updating the joint use agreement and school reserves agreement, so that's a new one. So in that capacity, I would think that operationally, we handle the relationship with the school districts and understanding their needs and trying to meet them as far as a municipality can very well.
Okay. And Councillor Schmidt-Rempel, do you have a perspective from being on the committee?
From being on the committee, it's certainly valuable discussion that we have, and even from talking to board members after the last meeting, they felt that their last meeting was probably the most productive that they'd had in discussing issues of common interest in the community regarding education and building and maintaining that collaborative and mutual beneficial relationship. So they have requested that at this time we not disband and that we discuss this further. And again, I would like to take this back to them, talk about the costs and expenses associated. If we can't do that at the January 29th meeting, I believe the next meeting is in April, to take that back to them at the April meeting. But because they are requesting that this not be disbanded at this time, I think it's worth having the discussions with them to see if they would be willing to share costs and resources in continuing this.
And just my own 2 cents on this, Acting Mayor Carlson, is I see this committee a lot like our committee with the county, where we're moving more to admin works with admin, just work behind the scenes, do the stuff you're always doing. And then when there is something that comes up to a governance level, have an ad hoc committee meeting and work on that. And that would be, in my idea, a possible answer for this one. But I don't know if that is the way that all the groups wish to move. So there are various ways. But I think the idea right now of putting this on hold and continuing the conversation may be a worthwhile discussion to have. I think it's the same sort of idea as the difference between a council committee and an admin committee. I don't think we've looked at all those, and I don't think we've fully explained to people that it doesn't mean it's of less value. It just means there's a different method of getting to the same answer. And those conversations are so vital to have on getting everybody to agree to wherever we're moving to. So that's why I do like the idea of putting them on hold as we're continuing those conversations, because it's a vital partnership that we don't want to lose, and we have to figure out the right mechanism is how I see it. Ms. Hilford?
I keep turning myself off. I don't know how to run the mic system. Thank you. I was just thinking that committee might want to consider looking at the mandate at their next meeting to see what jurisdiction that the council and committee would have prior to us putting any costs forward. Just our suggestion. David, did you want to add anything? Thank you.
Mr. Sarsfield, please come forward.
I get to speak again. So this is one of the committees that I always go to, and I would say I've been really the only one who's been there for the last 10 years. Right now, it does have no terms of reference. It has no jurisdiction, so we really can't calculate the costs and expenses associated with it till we determine what purpose it serves. The purpose it served 10 years ago, or it was established in the early 90s when it was first established, has changed dramatically, and our committee structure's changed, and so is theirs. So I would think the first thing you want to do is review what purpose it serves before we figure out any costs associated, because until you know what it's going to do in the future or what you want it to do in the future, we can't determine costs.
Okay, so from what I'm hearing, and Councillor Schmidt-Rempel, you may disagree with this, but I'm saying we keep the first two lines and 3 words of your motion. Just put it on hold and continue conversations. And you can have it for discussion at the January 29th, so it'll kind of like miss the middle part, just not the calculating costs and expensive stuff. And basically...
Yeah, no, just put this on hold and continue discussions.
Okay, so what's being recommended right now, Councillor Carlson, is put it on hold and continue discussions and then report back to a future SBC. Okay. We will... How are we doing, Mr. Westerson, for just rewriting that so we have all the... Do you need a few minutes or are we good?
I think, so just so we are absolutely clear,
You're just taking up...
it's your be it resolved part ends at boards on hold.
And the committee will continue conversations on the 29th and report,
So with the joint committee
Yeah,
having discussions at their January 29th meeting?
yes.
Or should we
Or do we even have to tell them that? Just put it on hold.
just put it on hold and let the committee bring it up?
Yeah, and the committee, and have the committee bring it back
So
before.
all of that struck out part is deleted
Yeah.
and it's just
But-
on hold.
Have the committee report back,
Well, no, would have our committee representatives report back.
Yep. At a future.
Because otherwise, if we just put it on hold, it's just hanging out there.
Yeah.
We need some kind of action to bring it back to us. Ms. Hilford, is that appropriate?
Yep.
All due respect, this is a decision of committee and council, so I'm not sure what the joint school would add, what any more information that you would need to make a decision on this.
It is, yeah, you're right, it's completely our decision. But again, respecting the partnership, we just want to make sure that if we're not making a unilateral decision without conversation, and it would be not them reporting back, but our reps. So either Councillor Schmidt-Rempel or Councillor Parker reporting back.
And instead of invite the committee representatives, put the councillor representatives.
Where it says the committee representatives, it'll say Councillor Schmidt-Rempel and Councillor Parker. Thank you.
Yep. Yep. That's fine.
All right, wordsmithing I know is never fun to watch, but does that capture what everybody was thinking it would be captured?
Yep.
Mr. Westerson, any process issues with it?
I would suggest when you send someone to report back on something, you do this with administration often, you refer to us to find additional information and you be specific about what that is. What are we asking Councillor Schmidt-Rempel, pardon me, and Councillor Parker to report back on?
To me, it is proposed mechanisms.
And the discussion.
If I can.
Please jump in, Acting Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd be more focused on the value added. One of the things that I'm getting concerned about is that I'm going to go philosophical. Maybe it's the neocitrin. As members of council, I think we run because we are curious and interested creatures. But sometimes that doesn't add value to anything. Just because we like to go out and be gregarious and garrulous and meet and talk doesn't mean we're adding any value. And I would hate to be seen as just doing things because we like it. If it's not bringing value to the community or the corporation. So that's what I'd like to see is what value added, because we know we already have great administrative connections for all of those fiddly bits that the school boards need with a city, any city they're contained in. And we also have mechanisms where we can attend their meetings, they can attend our meetings if the need arises. But to just have a meeting, again, for the sake of a meeting, because we like it, does not thrill me.
No,
So
I appreciate that. I was coming up with an answer to a question that may not yet exist, and yours is taking it one step further back, so I appreciate that. Mayor Higgin.
Thank you. I just, a question that I have, and I know that we've stroked out some of this, and sorry if I missed it earlier when I was not in, but I like the work that this committee is doing. Don't get me wrong. I think it's fantastic, especially, I mean, we talked about the joint school agreement that we have, and it's amazing that what we've done with that. My question is the cost again, and we've seen, and refer to manager administration to calculate costs. Is there a cost similar to the previous one that was pulled from your agenda? Or did I miss that? I'm just wondering if, again, maybe that covers in what Councillor Carlson or Acting Mayor Carlson mentioned about the value add. Is there a cost to have this administratively? I know that there's some shared costs I heard earlier as well from Councillor Schmidt-Rempel that might be something, not that anyone has agreed to it, but I just like to know a little bit more about what that cost is moving forward with this committee, or will that come back?
Mr. Sarsfield did mention that until we figure out what the board might be doing, we won't be able to know the cost, how often they might meet, those sort of things. So some of that would have to come later as part of whatever decision we might plan to make. Did I clarify, or did I summarize that, Mr. Brierley and Mr. Sarsfield, what you said? Yeah, they're nodding. So we have a sense of how much it kind of costs to run a committee, but until we set any parameters around this going ahead, because there's suggestions keeping it 3 times a year, having them meet more often, those sort of things would affect that. So we kind of have to come up with, as Councillor Carlson said, more, why is this group meeting? What are they actually going to do or achieve? Is there a need for it? And then the costing would come from how we see that moving ahead. So where I was looking at mechanism, the cost would fit in there, but Councillor Carlson has reminded us we need to take a step further back and talk about, should this exist, and if it should, how?
Because the reason I'm saying that is I don't want to slow down decisions and communication where getting councillors together to make sure that we're at these meetings, whereas administration could be in contact probably quicker than trying to herd us cats together. Sorry, I'll throw in this previous committee, but I'm just wondering. This is what is just got me thinking of is it beneficial? But it sounds like what Acting Mayor Carlson put forward regarding the value added, and that would be looked at in this. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes, that would be the discussion we'd be asking our 2 members to have with them, and then trying to figure out the balance between the value for us, the value for them, and how we might figure it out going forward. Knowing as well that there is another motion coming later about having other ways to meet with our MLAs, the school boards, other municipalities as well. So we may also have another potential solution for some of these as well.
Excellent. Thank you, Ms. Chair.
Thank you. All right, as we were having that conversation, Mr. Westerson, I know you guys managed to do some. Okay, Ms. Hilford?
I always turn myself off. Okay, sorry, Ryan. Through the chair to Mayor Hagan. Mayor Hagan, you may not have caught, but we had put a cost in our supplementary information, and it was approximately $25,000 for two staff to attend meetings and to do it properly, to clerk, to put the agendas out as per the procedure bylaw 7 days ahead, minutes and such, streaming I might have mentioned, and to do all that. And again, it depends on how heavy the committee is, how many times it meets, if it has subcommittees and such. There's also, and I did write in the supplementary info, there's other things. There's training, there's appointing members, recruiting, advertising, all that for public members. And then also there's the cost of admin staff, you know, whether ELT goes or GMs and writing reports and such. So it's not an easy cost to come up with, but there is cost.
Okay. Councillor Schmidt-Rempel, and then Mayor Hagan, I'll get to you, but she had her hand up first.
Just in for debate.
Oh, she's in for debate. Never mind. Mayor Hagan, go ahead.
No, thank you for that, Ms. Hilford, because I saw the 25,000, and this was for each committee. Now, does that all go away if it's administrative? Because you're still going to be doing work as an administrative committee if you're doing that work with the school board. So I'm just wondering, is that, and sorry if I missed that, but there must be some cost still to have administration involved with this, similar to that of if there was counselors involved, or am I missing something?
Ms. Hilford or Mr. Sarsfield, do we have some sense of how much it costs to run these as administrative committees?
It would be quite a bit less because you wouldn't be streaming. It would just be more informal, and it would only be kind of ad hoc when administration needs to meet with them on items that they're preparing information for council for. I think David's rearing at the bit to try and get in to say something.
Mr. Sarsfield wants the hat trick today to speak on this 3 times.
Yeah. 3 times is the charm. So right now, our original recommendation for this committee was to dissolve it. So there is no possibility of making it an admin committee. Right now what happens is admin meet with admin, and what's suggested is one of the other recommendations, which you haven't dealt with, is to set up meetings on an as-needed basis with the schools. So this would not be an admin committee. Right now the only support, I'm sorry. Right now, the only support we provide to it is right now it alternates between the 3 locations, separate school, public school, and here. And we host it, and that's it. And I'm the only one who goes from the city, other than the 2 council members.
So we don't price it out when admin just meets with admin working on issues, right? That's just part of everyday work. So if Ms. Gearing's department meets with representatives from the school, they don't figure out the pricing for that because that's just their job.
My last question then would be, and maybe we'll get Mr. Sarsfield up for 4 in a row here, I'll tell you what, but what would be, going back to what Councillor Acting Mayor Carlson by not having council members there?
Okay, I think you need to repeat that. You're freezing. So if you can repeat your question.
Sure. Going back what Councillor Carlson had asked for the previous committee, what would we be losing out on or missing if we did not have this? Because it's, there's a lot that find there's wonderful work that continues going forward. What will we miss out on?
All right, who in administration wants to tackle that? And then we'll look at the political answer as well. Go ahead, Mr. Sarsfield.
Okay, so that is a philosophical question that's up to you as a council. So from a min point of view, it's totally up to you. So right now what it is, it's a roundtable to discuss issues. There are no recommendations coming from that particular committee to council.
Thank you, Mr. Sarsfield.
Okay. Councillor Schmidt-Rempel.
I think to answer your question, Mayor Higgin, to completely disband it and walk away from it at this point would be to damage the relationship that we have with the school boards. They have asked loud and clear not to disband it at this time, so I think that we should give them the respect of at least having that conversation of what value they think it brings, rather than us just saying it doesn't bring any value at all. So that's why I suggest we put this on hold before we go ahead and disband that.
I'm not seeing anyone else in the queue. We have a motion before us. It is coming from Councillor Schmidt-Rempel. I will read it as we have it right now. Be it resolved that the Governance Standing Policy Committee recommend that City Council put the disbandment of the Joint Committee of the City of Lethbridge and Lethbridge School Boards on hold, and further be it resolved that the Governance Standing Policy Committee invite Councillor Schmidt-Rempel and Councillor Parker to report back regarding the value added by the Joint Committee of the City of Lethbridge and School Boards to the city at the February meeting of Governance Standing Policy Committee. Councillor Schmidt-Rempel.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much for all of the questions and the information that administration added to this. I do think it's a value that at this point, before we disband it, we do take it back to the Joint Committee to have this discussion with them, talk to them about what they see as the value added, and if this is something that they want to disband, also talking to them a bit about the costs. Perhaps this is something that they want to take on and invite us to. We have heard and we've received letters from the school boards that they would prefer that this not disband. They do see value in this. So again, I think this is worth a discussion with them before we go ahead and disband it without actually having a very straightforward conversation with them. Again, there's also a new superintendent of the Holy Spirit, and that individual should be given the opportunity to be brought up to speed and contribute to the conversation as well before we disband. And with that, I do hope for my colleagues' support on this.
Acting Mayor Carlson, you're in for debate.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm probably going to sound like a broken record. I can't support this. I don't see the value in it. To say that we need to keep giving people an opportunity to say the same thing they've said over and over again seems to be even less valuable to me. I do, because I've read ahead, I do support the item 16 that's going to be coming forward. Where we find a mechanism to have advocacy and joint discussions and regular meetings with all of our partners in the community. I think that's much more valuable than continuing to create a committee or hold a committee that has no terms of reference, has not made any recommendations to council or the school board. It's again, it just seems like a happy fun time, and I don't see the value in it. So I won't be supporting this.
I will be supporting this because even if this comes as a recommendation of council, can't come back to the 21st of January. They meet 8 days later. It's not going to have much of an effect on timelines or anything to have that conversation. If we do pass the other motion, then our colleagues also have something to take to them going, this is what's recommended. Does this, in fact, fill the spot that this other one was doing? And could have that conversation. And so out of respect for our partners, I would like to see the process be done in a way that lets them contribute to the conversation as much as we are, even though, of course, in the end, it will be our decision. But I do want to have the conversation to possibly hear ideas we haven't thought of from the school boards. So I will be supporting this to move ahead and as a recommendation to council. So question has been called. All in favor? And opposed? So goes forward, recommended 2-1. Next one, Mr. Lesterson. Okay. So next one is actually Heart of Our City. This one, I've got a motion here that I'm bringing forward. This one I have bounced around all over, had conversations with Heart of Our City, with administrative staff as well, recognize what this group is working on. But my recommendation that I'm bringing forward at this point is going to be the recommendation that came from admin to transition to an administrative committee, continuing to support the city and its priorities. The reason I am bringing this forward, one, I think they can do great work as an administrative committee. Two, because the Heart of Our City plan that they were operating under, the old one is very old. It has not been updated. They've achieved most of the things under that plan. We've kind of left them hanging out there without anything to actually do, in a sense. And so if this is of great value to council, one of the things I think we would have to do is actually create a second Heart of Our City plan and something for the committee to do. But without that being there right now, and I know they could continue their work with the administration on this as they've been doing right now, but I see this becoming much more administrative in its work. And again, no hierarchy, they're equal but different, and I think right now administrative committee would be the best place for Heart of Our City. So that's the motion I have, and we'll start with questions from any of the members of the committee around that motion. No questions. All right, any debate on it? All right, Councillor Schmidt-Rempel, you have the floor.
Thank you very much for bringing this forward, Councillor Carlson, or Crowson. In looking at the overlap between the boards, commissions, and committees, certainly we do see the overlap of Heart of Our City and the Downtown Lethbridge BRZ. So we do see that overlap, and we do want to make sure that we're not creating overlap and repeated work between our committees. Also, in speaking to Heart of Our City, our staff has done a fantastic job of speaking with them and working with them over the past few weeks with regards to transitioning to an administrative committee, and they've sent me a few text messages voicing that appreciation and thanking our administration for working with them on that, and that they are comfortable in moving forwards with becoming an administrative committee. So I will be supporting this.
Acting Mayor Carlson, anything to add to the debate? As both you and I have sat on this, I admit I think I had the greatest difficulty with this because I'm remembering Heart of Our City in the past, but again, it has changed, and I think this is a better fit for it today, even though it took me a long time to get to this place. So that is the motion going forward. I will call the question. Question has been called. All in favor? All right, that one goes forward, recommended unanimously. All right. Anything else? Is it just the lessons learned? Oh, youth advisory. All right, the next one we're going to look at is actually the Youth Advisory Council. Once again, I know Councillor Schmidt-Rempel and myself sat down with them. They were so disheartened that we were going to just replace them with a youth portal. And so talking to them, talking to administration, this is what is now being suggested. Be it resolved that the Governance Standing Policy Committee recommend that City Council, 1, transition the Youth Advisory Council from a committee of council to a working group with support from administration. 2, direct administration to create a youth portal to provide engagement opportunities with the youth within the City of Lethbridge. And 3, invite youth groups throughout the City of Lethbridge to work with the working group and submit to standing policy committees on projects of interest. Now, one of the concerns that might be here, we've never done a working group. We don't really know ourselves what exactly that might look like, which is why, again, there's steps throughout these. If these move forward, that would be in principle. And the idea here would be to provide them projects. Here is a bylaw. Here is something. And to give them something and say, work on this item. You're not going to be bound by all the rules and of a committee. But you will be given projects that we want the youth's opinion on. It's sort of the idea where we're going with this right now. So that is the motion being brought forward. Are there questions around this motion? Ms. Hilford, something to add at this point?
Yes, thank you. Just for clarification, would that be a working group of administration or would that be a working group of council?
I do know there are some members of council that wouldn't mind supporting them. So I'm not, yeah, that's a good question. I'm seeing it as a working group of council still, but I'm not, because that's always been sort of the plan, was to have them be mentored and supported by council. So I am going to suggest it's a working group of council, at least for the discussion of the motion at this point. Does that work in everybody else's mind? Acting Mayor Carlson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is going to take me a while to wrap my brain around. I was part of the council that created the Youth Advisory Committee. And at that point, we saw it a certain way. And I'm just being blunt, I don't think it's ever actually met its expectations in my mind. It was supposed to be an advisory group to council. It never ended up being that. It basically, I don't know what it was. It was a great little space, which had merits of its own. But I'm wondering if there's something else to look at, and I don't know what it would be. But trying to find youth that are interested in politics and the way municipal government work and find a way for them to add value to that has not been working. But we've got several really excellent youth organizations in our town, in our city. Sorry, we're going back. I was trying to be Tabor and go back to a town. And I'm wondering if that's not where we should be focusing, like connect with the Boys and Girls Club, the Youth Ones, the Woods Homes, rather than trying to say one student from LCI, one student from CCH, one student from the university, where they don't have a system of connecting amongst each other. So we only get that one singular individual's point of view. Whereas I'm thinking, there'd be much more value in connecting with the Woods Homes, the Boys and Girls Club, etc., because that spreads a much wider net. So I don't know what I'm thinking, but but what we have been doing is not working for me. It never materialized into what I had hoped, and so I'm just spitballing now, but I'm not sure what we need.
Your concerns are actually echoed by the group because, and it's one of the reasons we have that earlier motion to remove organizational members, because the same thing, they couldn't get quorum because they were supposed to have members from certain groups our schedule doesn't work with theirs because the kids would be done in June at the end of the school year, and then they wouldn't have anybody in the fall. And so it just, for various reasons, wasn't working. That's one of the reasons this is one of the group that needs those members polled, like the organizational members, and needs to go and find their own members a different way, which is why number 3 is suggested here. And there are, from what I've seen, a group of people very interested in those sort of things, the politics and stuff. But you're right, this group has been floundering, which is why I think the administrative decision was to recommend originally a youth portal. Again, having met with them, and I'm with you. I don't know what this working group, how it will end up. Mr. Westerson reminded me that if we make it a council working group, basically it's a council committee under a different name, so it probably should be an administrative working group, which would probably make it more effective. And it really is, again, it would be much more ad hoc, pull them together when there is something. I know that I had one member of the group attend one of the field trips that I had here. And so involving them in those things, reminding ourselves to invite them to certain things, like should they be at the community conversations, should those sort of things, so that they can first learn some of the things. And that was the other thing we discussed, is maybe we have to do some professional development with the group originally at the beginning, so they have the background. But you're right. Are we creating more work than we need to? Maybe, but I don't want to give up on a youth group just yet. No. And that's why, again, we'd be moving this forward in principle as a working group and then figuring out the details as we move along. At least they're recommended to our colleagues. They may look at it and go, sure, let's figure it out, or they may look at it and go, you guys are kidding yourselves. Like, I don't know. But I'm not willing to I'm not willing to give up on it yet. And having met the youth that are still part of this, I'm not willing to walk away from them.
Thank you. I guess if we move forward, because I'm still struggling, I'll probably do a motion to divide number 2 to be voted on separately.
Okay, do you want to do that now?
If we can, thank you.
Okay, so that's the youth portal, and keep 1 and 3 together.
And the only reason I was asking for that, Madam Chair, was because number 2 is something concrete we can achieve right away. The other would be a longer term philosophical meander.
Okay, do you want to then bring number 2 forward as a motion right now? And
yes,
then
please.
Then we can continue our meandering?
I love meandering.
Okay, so I'm Councillor Schmidt-Rempel, you're fine with that? Yep. All right, so we'll do 2 as a separate motion. Back to you, Councillor Carlson, if you want to bring that forward.
Sure.
Oh, just a second. Mr. Brierley, you have something to add before I see that you're in the queue. Go ahead. Sorry.
Just on the administration piece, and it would be vastly different, but just from hearing the group when they were here last time and them trying to get members to come out from university and the college. The university and the college already have their own groups. We have a staff member that meets with them. So as opposed to, I'm saying go the other direction, as opposed to trying to recruit people into this youth advisory group, they would be better suited to be part of those other groups that meet with Perry Stein from administration that already has this structure that exists today.
Okay, is that university post-secondary students that he's meeting with?
Yes, it is.
And some of our members are high school students. So something we might have to think through.
Well, yeah, unfortunately, I don't have Perry here, so high school is a twist. I don't have all the answers.
Okay. So figure out if that might be part of the working group discussion then, if there's already a group, if we can tie it together. But let's jump back to number 2, because I think, again, just hearing, I think we're all in agreement that the youth portal is something we need to move forward on looking into. So Councillor Carlson, back to you if you want to make that motion.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And this is one I do support, because having a community-wide youth portal, I think will spread our net much wider. And that's always been one of my concerns with, as I mentioned earlier, with the YAC, is it was a fairly small group of individuals without any support to go spread the message to the wider community, even though they did try on occasion. I think this way it shows that the city is interested in youth engagement, and it allows people to interact at their own pace and tempo and at their leisure. So I would like to see this move forward.
Okay. On number 2, question's been called. All in favor? And that passes unanimously. So we're now back to 1 and 3, transitioning to an admin working group with support from administration, inviting youth group to work with the working group and present, submit. So 3 only moves forward if 1 moves forward. So the 2 are linked. Do we want to add to it, look into transitioning from a committee of council to an admin working group? Because if we say look into, that then also would permit Mr. Brierley to speak with Mr. Stein and to see if there is a way of connecting the 2. It just gives us, again, option to look into some of those things. So if we just made that change, look into transitioning, it becomes more of a review than we're moving in this direction. Would that answer your question, Mr. Brierley, to have Mr. Stein look into it?
Yeah, I think that certainly allows us to go away and explore the work that's needed, and then the value that because I certainly hear about the importance of this group, so I think a little more discussion is required, and then we could come back with some ideas as to what that might look like.
Madam Chair, just quickly on that one, are you looking to amend the wording on item number 1 there to, because as we've discussed with some of the other ones, these are going to go to the January 21st City Council meeting to direct administration to do something. So number 1 would be recommend council direct administration to look into possibility of transitioning this to an administrative committee
Well,
or a, for lack of better terms, council committee in place of working group.
If we do that, that delays everything to January, right, till whatever council decision. If we were just to refer this back to admin,
That would be
then they could work on
better.
it, like not take your Christmas break, but they could work on it before January 21st, and before the next governance meeting.
So are you looking, just so for absolute clarity, refer items 1 and 3 to administration?
I'm saying we have two options, right? We can say we want to move to a transition committee and direct council, or we can refer it back and see if that's the best option. So, Mr. Brierley, from your admin perspective, would you rather have this refer and do a little, have your administrative staff do a little more looking into whether in a working group or whether working with Mr. Stein is a better option? Or would you prefer that this goes as a recommendation to council? And again, final decision will be made by the committee, but what would be your preferred from admin perspective?
Yeah, I think refer is better. I winced a little bit at the time frame if they were to come back in January, and students are away too, so I don't see that as viable. So
Well, and next
yeah.
governance is not till February, so you would have
That's
some
a little
time.
better. Yep.
So it would give you about 2 months to have those conversations if we referred.
Okay.
All right. Councillor Schmidt-Rempel? Come on.
And do we need to specify in there what groups administration will be talking with, particularly if we're not only looking at post-secondary groups, but we're also looking at youth groups, perhaps the school district groups throughout the city? Would you like some direction on that, Mr. Brierley? Or
School district groups have already been removed, like as
but
members.
you would still want to be talking to the high school groups if they have groups within the school districts that they could be talking to?
So just
Do we
some
need to
clarity
provide direction?
for myself here, and maybe others have already figured this out or not. One of the other motions you've already done here was a recommendation to council to remove all of your organization reps, which are your university, your college, your polytechnic, and your school divisions, as well as really these other youth groups. This would be a little bit contrary to that
Exactly, and
previous recommendation.
That's why I'm asking. So you would like some direction then to speak with the post-secondary groups as well as some of the youth organizations? Like, I guess, what direction do you need from us out of this?
Or is a simple referral and having heard the conversation, would that be enough?
Yeah, so Councillor Carlson, I heard him mention some other groups, not to make this worse, but beyond this. So it could be quite voluminous depending on the scope council wishes to consider. So yeah, whatever direction council wishes to provide, or committee in this case wishes to provide.
Okay. Are you good?
Well, I'm just, because if you're looking for direction, would you like a list of organizations? Or I guess that's, think about that and let me know what kind of direction you're looking for so we can get that in there.
Unfortunately, if we would have had Perry here, he might have an idea, but let's let us have discussions with them, and then it might be at that meeting we come back with some thoughts and then seek further direction.
Okay, okay, just because there are more than just the post-secondaries we want to be engaging with here.
Acting Mayor Carlson?
Pardon me. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm probably going to sound like a broken record this entire meeting. I'm more in favor of moving forward with the recommendation of disbanding the ACT, creating the portal. And I think a lot of what I'm hearing through all of the discussions today is that we can accomplish what we need to accomplish a different way. Just because we've always had committees and it's always been the structure we deal with, I don't think it's the smartest way to do it. There's not a real good connection or flow of information or timely flow of information. I think council needs to do a better job of considering how we engage not just the youth, not just the school boards, not just the animal welfare groups, but our entire community. People come out when they're interested, when there's something for them that draws their interest. And maybe that's what we need to focus on. If there's something happening in our community, like say we're doing a rec and culture master plan, that's a great time for something like the youth advisory committee to be engaged, or for us to reach out to those groups that already have youth groups. Not the school boards, but the school councils, right? The president, vice president of those. We might need to do a better job of, okay, we're heading into our capital plan, go to their meeting, their school council meeting, and pitch to them how they can get involved. Same with Woods Home, same with Boys and Girls Clubs. But having these committees or working groups that are just there because we might find something of interest for them to do just doesn't make sense to me. If an issue pops up, let's address it and figure out how to get the engagement, how to get the involvement. But continuing just to have committees for the sake of committees seems so last year, to put it that way, to me. So I'm supporting all of the administrative recommendations that came forward to remove committees. And if there's a better way people can figure it out, I'll support that. But for right now, I don't think committees for the sake of committees make sense. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Carlson. All right, so we still have the motion on the table, and the motion has been, in my mind, changed to refer. Oh, what do we actually have now, Mr. Westerson?
I see that it's referring this matter to administration, accepting item 2, because obviously item 2 was voted on separately, to return to the February Governance SPC with further information regarding the transition of the Youth Advisory Committee to a working group with support from administration. And that was, for absolute clarity, either an administrative committee or a committee of council, for lack of other better terms, in place of what we currently have.
Great. So is there any further discussion on this motion? I know, Councillor Carlson, you will likely be voting against it since you have an opinion on that, but no recommended amendments to this? Okay. Councillor Schmidt-Rempel, go ahead.
Just going back to the conversation we had, are we recommending this to council to refer it to administration, or are we going to refer it straight to administration?
There should be a referral straight from SPC
we can refer directly to
administration.
Okay, so we just need to take that. Yeah, okay.
So yeah, this would not go to council yet because we haven't come up with a recommendation for council yet.
Yep. Okay.
All right. That is the motion on the floor. Refer it, hear back in February. Go ahead, Councillor Carlson.
Maybe I do have an amendment.
Okay.
And further, that until until a decision is made, disband the committee. Otherwise, they're going to keep meeting in the interim. And we're removing all we're basically cutting the committee in half by pulling all the organizational appointments. I don't know that they're having great luck making quorum as is. I'm saying disband the committee for now and then create what we're going to create rather than having two things going at the same time. That's just an observation.
Okay. Mayor Higgin, are you speaking on the amendment?
Well, a question I have just about, you're saying to have this come back, I see on the amendment in February. Is it not on council's agenda to have this come back to council already, or am I wrong? And it coming back in January, it's supposed to come back in January. Do we have to change something there? Is just what I'm just wondering.
No, the recommendations that we have passed will be going to the January meeting, but only if the recommendation's been moving forward. Otherwise, it's still only at the governance level. So this one has never been recommended on to council in any way. And so if we refer it to governance, it's just going to stay at this level until finally a recommendation is made to go to council.
Because I think a thorough discussion of this should have a recommendation to council as we're dealing with boards, commissions, and committees. And so I know I can't make that, but I'm hoping somebody puts something forward to bring it into January so we can get this dealt with in January. Just my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Acting Mayor Carlson, that's a formal amendment, so we have to vote on the amendment. So if you want to call the question on that.
Madam Chair, just quickly
just a
for
second.
clarity.
Yes,
The
Mr. Weston.
First be it resolved clause, this is referring to administration.
Oh, we're just voting on his amendment to
Oh, pardon
disband
me,
in the
sorry.
time.
Yep, we can proceed with that.
Yeah, that's the only thing we're voting on, his amendment, correct? All right. Councillor Carlson, you've made that motion?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just think it makes sense that if we're going to be creating something new, we don't keep with the one that I think we all know has not been working effectively. So I'd ask that we disband the Youth Advisory Committee until we come up with a better option
Okay.
or model.
Question's been called. All in favor? And opposed? Amendment fails. We go back to the original motion. Original motion is to refer and hear back in February.
And for absolute clarity, Madam Chair, just for my sanity amongst maybe any others, we're referring the transition of the Youth Advisory Committee to a working group, and then in brackets with support from administration. Are you asking for an administrative committee, or, as previously identified, really the working group with support from administration with members of council is a council committee? And if that came back, that will be likely the recommendation at that point in time would be to constitute a council committee if that's what council desires.
Okay. Right now, we're just looking for recommendations, and hopefully we're not just going to get circular logic back to where we started, but we'll see.
Trying to avoid that, just looking for absolute clarity on the terminology of what a working group is.
Well, and we don't know, because I don't think it legally exists, does it?
The MGA outlines a council committee. It does not outline a working group, and that's what we defer to in our procedure bylaw and in the adherence to the MGA.
Okay. Okay.
I would say for the consideration. Just consideration, it does say with the information regarding, clarity of wording is council members of committee agree.
Yeah, I wanted it more vague than it sounds right now.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay. Okay. Does that answer your question, that we're just looking into it?
But one of the items that Perry might say doesn't really fit with my groups, and in fact, one of the options is they could organize themselves as high school secretary, come present to governance committee, anything, but it will be sponsored by a member of council if they have something.
Yeah.
That's one of the options I see.
And that's, I think that's the understanding, is we're looking at options. We want to know what we possibly could do.
Okay. As long as committee is good, we'll work with that one.
Okay. Are you fine with making that motion, Councillor Schmidt-Rempel? Okay. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much to everybody for the thoughts and considerations with regards to this committee. Again, when Councillor Crowson and I sat down with the Youth Advisory Council, they were quite crushed just to find out that they were going to be changed into a portal, and they didn't fully understand the purpose of the review meeting. They want to be successful. They want projects to work on. They are an enthusiastic group, but something that became evident during that meeting with them is that, yes, they've been floundering, but they've been floundering because they don't feel like they have direction, nor have they been given direction. There's been a lot of transition in that group, and they actually don't have any history either. Nothing's been left historically for them to understand what they've worked on in the past. So I do think that there is value to still holding on to this group. I think there's value for council to be working with this group. And I would like to see us move forward with them in some way, shape, or form to find something that we can find workable. If it turns out that we are just going to end up with a portal, then that's where we end up. But I do think that just a portal will not cast a wider net, and we will just lack engagement and lose engagement of the youth in our community. And we don't want that. We certainly want youth to become engaged citizens in this city. And with that, I hope that I have the support from my colleagues on this one.
Okay, question's been called. All in favor? And opposed? Okay, that is referred. Okay, is it just my lessons learned there?
No.
Okay, now item 12. The new motion that I'm bringing forward is be it resolved that the Governance Standing Policy Committee recommend that City Council direct administration, 1, to increase support and training to both the public members and administrative liaison of the board, commissions, and committees of council, and 2, provide professional development opportunities to city staff for the benefit of the boards, commissions, or committees. Now, the reason for this is twofold. One, we sit here and we create a new committee and we tell administration to deal with it. We don't always ensure that any of the staff who've been asked to work with the board, commissions, and committees are given both the support and the training to do it effectively. And we may not also have the training going forward for the public members as well. And so that this would just ensure that when we do create something in the future, or the ones that we are intending to keep, that they get the appropriate support, and that if we're going to create them through bylaws as we're supposed to, that these are some of the questions we ask ourselves as we move forward. And so this one is brought forward for discussion among the committee. Any questions to begin from members of committee? Any debate from members of committee?
Sorry, Madam Chair, I had a question and I couldn't get my hand up.
Oh, please go ahead with your question.
Sorry. I love this. I think it needs to happen. I don't know what the cost is going to be.
Okay.
We've been chatting about cost and now we're increasing support and increasing training, and I'd like to know if there's a cost for this.
All right. You're right. When I brought the motion forward, I did not look at any costing. I don't know if there has been an opportunity, and we did not request it, so there wouldn't have been, to look at the cost. This could be another one that we don't make a final decision on, but we just instead refer this back to governance to find out cost before we take it to our colleagues. Or we could ask that it be costed out before January 21st, before it becomes a recommendation, if it moves forward. There are a few things we can do to answer that question. Ms. Hilford, do you have some sense right now either of a cost or what you would need to do to find a cost?
Thank you, Madam Chair. City Clerks was always looking to expand our training to administration support and to public members. And if you look at Chart 2, we would absorb that. However, if there's going to be, again, additional BCCs that stay and continue, we would have to revise that chart and the service level with regards to maybe streaming or combative sports. We wouldn't clerk or whatever. But also, professional development is a broad term, and if committee or council could narrow that down or be more specific as to what exactly you're looking for professional development and training, that may help us as well.
Okay. My thought with professional development training, and I guess I was broad because I'm really not sure myself, but your area probably knows, there must be training for staff on how to work with committees. And how to oversee a committee. That would be the type of training I would be imagining about how to guide a committee, how to provide support for a committee. Because again, we expect a lot of staff. We just create them and throw them at you. So does that answer your question, Acting Mayor Carlson, that the Clerk's Department has this time with the amount we have, could absorb it as part of their budget?
And is that what thank you, Madam Chair.
Unless we create a lot more, unless we keep a lot more.
That I've been trying to get rid of a lot unsuccessfully, so I think it might cost more, but I'm just, I need to know cost. And even if, don't worry, we can do it within the budget currently. I know that at our last council meeting, we're also directing administration to find efficiencies to pay for a big ticket item. And so I'm just curious. I'd like to know more about cost before I support this. I think it's imperative, but I need to know what it's going to cost and if we need to put a budget line next to it.
Okay, Ms. Hilford.
Madam Chair, sorry I wasn't clear, but if we go beyond Chart 2 and we add some BCCs to what there is, then there would be additional cost. So we would have to come back to committee and council to get some more cost, because we wouldn't be able to absorb that, or else we would just not stream, or we wouldn't support combative sports. But we would have to come back with costs and a few options for service levels.
Okay, just for my own understanding, the ones that you can cover are basically the legislated ones with no additional cost.
That's correct.
Okay. So some of the ones we are recommending, we're still not sure, right? I mean, we're putting some on hold, having conversations around them. Would you then prefer that this gets referred? And I'm speaking, when I say would you, that's both to acting mayor and to administration. Would you prefer that this gets referred to governance or to administration to report back on costing? Would that be easier than trying to do this on the fly? Acting mayor?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd appreciate that. I think this is imperative, but I don't want to be in a case where we're saying, Mr. Brierley, make this happen. Oh, by the way, you get no extra dollars to do this. And just knowing what it would cost us, if we could shrink down our committees and save some dollars, I'd be in great favor of that.
Okay. Ms. Hilford or Mr. Brierley, would a referral motion be effective at this time for getting more information before a decision's made?
Thank you. We were just having a chat. We all agree that until the dust settles and we know exactly what committees that council wants to continue on with and what the mandates are, that we can't provide an accurate cost.
Okay. So a referral motion would not get you necessarily the answer right now until everything else kind of figures out. So we could table this, or postpone this. We could, kind of put it in our back pocket for discussion as we move ahead. We could move this forward in principle, but not to be done unless we have costing. So there's a couple of options that I see moving this around. What are people thinking right now? Because I agree, yeah, this is essential, but again, I don't want to make a decision that we would then have to backtrack because we've just spent more money than we thought.
Mm-hmm. I love your idea, Madam Chair, about in principle, but within budget.
We could add that. We could say moving ahead in principle within current operating budget. And then that would give Ms. Hilford's team the understanding that you only can do as much of this as you have budget for, and anything else would then be required to come back to council because you're changing service level.
Yeah, picking and gives them the opportunity to pick and choose. And I think it also then could give council the opportunity to say, you could reduce the amount of committees you have, or you could increase the budget if you want to do more.
I think Mr. Westerson has an idea for how we can phrase that in a way that captures that.
I don't know if I have an idea, rather more of a comment, and I was hopefully not stepping on Ms. Hilford's toes here. I think the way that administration may interpret number 2 is that we're going to provide professional development, and we would just do that within the current operating budgets that we have. If we would need to increase them, we would come and look to increase them at some point.
And would that apply to 1 as well, with the understanding that both of these have to be within current budgets? Should we add that? Direct administration to increase and provide this within current operating budgets?
I think potentially. I don't know what increase really means in this motion. Just for committee's awareness, the clerk's office already does provide training to all your boards, commissions, and committees members that are appointed January, February of each year in accordance with the Public Member Code of Conduct bylaw as well as the procedure bylaw. So there is a training that is already provided for your information.
Okay, Ms. Hilford?
Just going to add again, we don't know how much money we can devote to additional expanded training until we know how many committees that we're dealing with and how many times they meet. So we may, again, want to table this until we know that information.
Okay. So we can table this until information comes back to bring it forward. And the difficulty there is we just have to make sure we remember it's sitting on the table. Postponed. It's not going to come back in the same meeting. So I will make a motion, because this is my motion, that we postpone this. Go ahead, Councillor Schmidt-Rempel.
Sorry, before you make the motion, Councillor Crowson, because this is provided as part of, so number 12 was provided as part of the recommendation from administration to council. What was the intent behind number 12, that increased support and training to the BCCs of council be provided? Given that we're talking about the cost and given that we're talking about the cost around this and everything, what was the intent of this? Because there must have always been a concern that there was going to be increased costs because we talk about increased support and training to the BCCs of council. What was the original intent then?
Thank you for the question. The original intent was, because of the service levels, that clerks would only support the legislated committees. Therefore, we would have extra capacity to do this increased training. So that's why we're saying we have to wait until all the decisions are made on what BCCs are continuing or not.
Okay.
And therefore, we would know what capacity we have. But that was the intent. The intent were all those recommendations we put forward in the report.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, back to the motion to postpone this until we have a final decision on which committees are continuing as committees of council. Does that work, Mr. Westerson, from a procedure perspective?
We can go with that. That seems rather open-ended, but we'll work with it.
Okay. Any further questions? All right. Question's been called. All in favor? Okay, that one is postponed. Item 16. Now this is from Councillor Schmidt-Rempel. In modification of item 16 from the list, be it resolved that the Governance Standing Policy Committee recommend that City Council establish regular, at least annual, elected officials, all of City Council, to elected officials meetings with mutual partners with administration to attend, including the following. So it's not limiting. The Kainai Blood Tribe Band Council, regional municipalities, Member of Parliament, MLA Lethbridge East, MLA Lethbridge West, University of Lethbridge, Red Crow College, Lethbridge Polytechnic, and school boards. Councillor Schmidt-Rempel, if you want to open this one.
Yeah, and this is, like you said, a modification of number 16, just to specify what exactly we would be looking at. Again, it's not limited to. Some of these we already do already, so this formalizes it. And some of this we may do in future, like we're looking at the school boards there. That does give Councillor Parker and I a tool to go into the school boards to have that discussion with them. And again, it's just to make sure that we are, as Councillor Carlson had said previously during this meeting, finding ways to engage with our partners throughout our community and making sure that we are regularly looking at at meeting with our MP, our MLAs. We've been doing this already, but again, it's just formalizing and making sure that we are in fact doing these things and meeting with our partners throughout the region.
Okay. Any questions on the motion? Acting Mayor, do you have a question? Are you ready? Oh, go ahead then.
Thank you. I love this. Of course, we've got to get buy-in from all of the folks mentioned. We cannot just unilaterally demand. But I think this is something we should have been doing, well, forever, but for a long time at least. There are so many issues affecting our community that all of our partners can take a stab at helping. And I don't see this list as exhausted. As Councillor Schmidt-Rempel said, this is just a short list. It sort of brings to mind sort of like a Team Lethbridge approach, but more formalized and more regular. And I think if we do have these meetings, many of our committees that, in my mind, meet for the sake of meeting would be much better utilized through this format. So I will greatly support this. Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to assume questions called? Yep. Questions been called. All in favor? And that one passes unanimously to recommend forward.
There you go.
All right. On to the motion arising. Having met with the various members of some of the different committees, having sat down with administration, having heard concerns and ideas from all those groups and my colleagues as well, I put together what I'm calling, again, a lessons learned. It's a motion arising. Be resolved that the Governance Standing Policy Committee recommend that City Council, 1, request administration to develop a lessons learned document from the board, commissions, and committee review with input from the Governance Standing Policy Committee to assist with the following. A, any future development of boards, commissions, and committees of council, including 1, the creation of a board, commission, and committee of council, will include an end date, either decided by recommendation or decided at the end of the term of the creating council, with the understanding that future council could extend the term of the BCC. When a BCC is recommended, consideration is given to whether the board, commission, or committee is best suited as a committee of council or an administrative committee. And 3, consideration is given to the resources required to ensure the effectiveness of the BCC when either the board, commission, or committee is created or the terms of reference or bylaw are amended. Now, this is kind of wordy. It can certainly be changed, but essentially it's when we create one, think it through, always create an end date either through the resolution or just naturally at the end of that council term. Have conversations with any of the committees we create that a BCC of council, unless it's a legislated, is not necessarily created because there is a concern in the community, which it could be, but that there is a priority of council that's being addressed because they are there to work with and on behalf of council. And so there may be issues in the community that we can find other ways of addressing, but these very much have to link to priorities of council going forward. And we have to think through how they're created and if we have the resources to create them. And so that in a nutshell is what this is. I think I was writing this late at night, so it may not make as much sense when I read it now as when I was thinking it in my head, but that in a nutshell is what this is. Essentially, here are some things I think we need to think about, and I'm sure the city clerk's department and other departments have also gone, I wish council would have considered this when they created a BCC. Basically just creating that, filing in a way so that we can give it to future councils and go, okay, we did some mistakes. You probably should pay attention to these things. And that's the idea behind it. Acting Mayor Carlson, I see your hand is up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And whether you wrote this late at night or not, I greatly appreciate it. It makes a lot of sense to me. I do have one question to assist with the following. A, any future development of boards. I guess that says to me that future boards, this would be applicable to, but existing ones, it's not. And I would like to see it apply to them all so that any boards that exist during the term of the council, they either have an end date or at the end of that council term, they end. And I think that is brilliant because it gives each council the opportunity to create what is what is needful for them at the time. So I'm just wondering about that word future.
The idea with that was, lessons learned is something that, to me, is a future document. And we have some BCCs right now that don't even have a terms of reference. So it's very hard to give you an end date when you don't even have a terms of reference, et cetera. And so I was thinking of this as a moving forward document rather than retroactively applying it, because in some ways that would make a lot of work to go back. So that's where I was thinking, is that the discussions we've been having have been kind of on the ones that exist. This is a future one. I have no problem making, changes if my colleagues are going, no, you got to try to apply it to all. I just don't know if it's easy to apply to all that exist.
Thank you for that. I'd be more keen to support it if it applied to current and future, so that we know that even the ones we've created.
But remember, all they're doing is creating a document. They're not actually making changes to anybody. Right? Gotcha. All we're asking here, if you rewrite the beginning, is asking them to put a document together. And we would be responsible for following that document with any future ones. So.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Schmidt-Rempel.
To follow up on Councillor Carlson's concerns, I'm wondering if, opposed to an end date, we call it a review date, so that rather than ending, they're being reviewed. And then they can end if there's a decision that they should end. But maybe instead of ending, they're being reviewed for value, for lack of a better term. They're being reviewed for any changes. They're being reviewed perhaps to segue out of the city's purview, but that they're annually reviewed as opposed to having an end date. Or review date. I'm just thinking review rather than end, but I can see where you're coming with an end date. I'm just thinking maybe a review date, and that covers all of them as well.
I appreciate, but I think when you get down to A, especially I, et cetera, we're getting into the minutia. I think let's focus on the fact that really we're just asking admin to take everything they've heard from us and come back with the document. And they might recommend a review, or they might recommend an end date. But I think what we need to focus on is we're just asking them to take this and go create a document. Right? Yeah, no, I can create a document. No, but it's asking admin to create the document. So I think we're getting into the minutia of what they might put into the document. But I think in the end, it's just, let's just put together some ideas for future councils so they don't get back into having BCCs that aren't reviewed, except for a decade later when we're going, when did we create them? Why did we create them? Who? So, does that make sense? Let's let them come back with the minutia. These are just some suggestions from what might be in that document. When the document comes back, then we can look at what their recommendations are. I did not give any timeline on this because, again, I know administration has a lot of stuff. I'd like to see it for sure ready by the next council, but I don't think there's any other rush. I think it really is something we're preparing for the 2025 council. So even if Ms. Hilford, again, probably going to be coming from your department, what kind of timeline do you need to put something like this together? I'm sure you already have thoughts, but I don't want to make you guys have, I don't want you having to think this is a hurry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You read my mind. We already have thoughts. It was the last bullet in the supplementary information that we gave, that this be a recommendation. So it's very important work. So I'm thinking maybe Q1. Maybe we might be able to make February. I don't know. But
somewhere in
we
Q1.
have pretty much all this information. We just got to put it together. We see it as some kind of a template coming to governance. So it shouldn't be onerous work to do this, but I believe very important work, and it'll create efficiencies down the road.
Okay.
Thank you.
So We can either add to it or just on the understanding that sometime within Q1, we would be seeing this back, and then we can discuss what's actually in it. This is just some suggestions I have put in. Of course, when it comes back, all members of committee may have other suggestions or might have recommendations on it. Does that make sense? Okay. Then I am going to make this a formal motion. You can correct my typos. Again, probably when I'm over-caffeinated late at night, I should not try writing, or at least not try editing. So anybody want to correct any of the typos, go right ahead.
Can we take out the errant apostrophe on lessons learned document, please? It's no apostrophe on lessons. Yeah, let's get rid of that one. And the on point number 1, end dash date, take out that hyphen. That does not belong there. Thank you.
Okay. All right.
Oh, that can have a space. You need a space.
With those, I'm going to call the question. Question's been called. All in favor? And that goes forward, recommended unanimously. Go right ahead.
Just one question on the supplemental information, and this does not have to do with any of the votes we've just had. Clarifying through you, City Manager, to the City Clerk, costs associated with the BCC, ongoing costs to support one of these committees would be at minimum $25,000. So is that per meeting, or is that just as a whole?
Thanks again for the question. So again, that's kind of an average.
Okay.
And it depends. It depends how many times the BCC meets. It depends if it has subcommittees. Depends if there's hearings for that BCC. So that's just kind of like an average ballpark. And that would be that's 2 staff in a meeting, and that's including streaming as well. So.
Okay.
I don't know if that helps with the answer. Okay.
Yeah,
thank
no,
you.
that helps very much. Thank you.
Okay. We would like to, if we can, be done within the next 45 minutes, and we only got first 3 things. We've got 3 things off the agenda, so we are half done. But we're moving on now to asset management, which we had a great conversation about at the last, second last council meeting. There is information in there. It is a submission. As my colleagues will remember, this is a hierarchy. The policy would be the first, then we'll see the strategy, and then there will be plans. Policy is at the governance level, strategy and plans will be at the admin level. Of course, we'll be updated on those as well. Are there any questions regarding the asset management policy from members of the committee or from Mayor Higgin? Councillor Schmidt-Rempel, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Chair. And this, through the city manager, or to the city manager or designate, we talk about in the draft policy intangible asset types, but we don't define intangible asset types. I'm wondering if somebody can outline what intangible assets are and if we should not have a definition of that.
It's patents, copyrights, goodwill, and your brand.
So I'm wondering if we should not have a definition of that since we define tangible capital assets.
Mr. Matthews?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Schmidt-Rempel. Yes, we'll put a definition inside of there, or we can add a definition into that.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you
And we can put that into the motion if we need to. Now, just to also clarify, because this is a new program, we will be reviewing this policy once a year for the first while, and then we will be doing it every 4 years. So because we are, I think, aware that there might be changes needed to the policy over the next while.
Thank you, Councillor Crowson. Yes, that is correct.
Because this is something new for us. All right. Any other questions on this?
Yep. To follow up on that one, then we also talk about appropriate levels of service. What do we consider, or how do we define appropriate levels of service?
Thank you, Councillor Schmidt-Rempel. So that goes into a little bit more on the discussions we had over the last little while on service levels. So service levels are one of the things that council defines as part of the budget process throughout the many, I guess, iterations of budget process. What I mean by that is over the years, they'll set a certain standard or a service level for an area of work. And in layman's terms, that means how many times, for example, I know the city manager uses how many times you mow the grass per week in a certain area or in parks and those kind of levels. That might be a little granular, but that gives a little bit of context around it. So once those service levels are set, then what it's referring to in the asset management cycle or portion is the assets that are required to maintain that level of service, and what would that look like for life cycling those assets and replacements of those assets, and that's what the asset management strategy gets into.
Okay, thank you very much.
Oh, any other questions? All right, we'll move to the motion. The motion is coming from Acting Mayor Carlson. Be it resolved that the Governance Standing Policy Committee recommend that City Council adopt City Council Policy CC 68, Asset Management Policy, as an attachment 1, and we can just amend that and with the addition of a definition of intangible assets. If you don't mind just adding that. So Acting Mayor Carlson, it is your motion.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the work that was done on this, and I think it'll be very beneficial to the corporation and council going forward. So I'd ask for my colleagues' support.
Great. Question's been called. All in favor? And that goes forward, recommended unanimously. Perfect. Moving now to 6.3. 6.3 is also from Mr. Matthews. It is a bunch of recommended policy rescindments, some of which because they are now going to be admin policies, some because they're covered under other areas. So I have a motion from Councillor Schmidt-Rempel. Be it resolved that the Governance Standing Policy Committee recommend that City Council rescind the following list of policies. 1, CC6, Risk Management Policy. CC14, City Council Members Report to Council Policy. CC15, Attendance at Political Functions Policy. CC18, Use of Registered City of Lethbridge Crest and Flag Policy. CC39, Social Policy. CC41, Upgrading Pre-Existing Secondary Suite Policy. CC42, Protective Plumbing Program Policy. CC48, Recordings of Legislative Meetings Policy. CC57, Encroachment Policy. And CC63, Deferral Request Framework Policy. I see Councillor Carlson already has his hand up, so I'm going to assume he has a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just through you to administration, because I'm sure people will see us rescinding risk management policies, etc., and going, what? I just want clarity for anyone watching along, playing the home game, so to speak, that these are being rescinded because they are covered elsewhere, or they are already under other policies. We are not just getting rid of things. These are superfluous or redundant policies. Am I correct?
Thank you, Councillor Carlson. So yes, the short answer is you are correct. What I will say specifically in risk management is that in itself is integrated into all of our other policies into it. This was one of the capstone policies that went over departments in the past, where you would have seen financial services, HR, risk management. We've changed some of the policy development pieces, and so it's not that risk management's gone away. It's actually even more live than ever, and it's actually within the policies, business practices, and so forth. So this particular, the way it's worded, has gone away, but it's showing up in many other places. I think on the other policies you mentioned, some of them are looked after under procedure bylaws, council code of conduct bylaw, or they're seen now that they're really part of administrative procedures, not so much a council governance policy. And so they're being moved in that direction. So all of these will have supporting background policies, just administrative or bylaws or procedures, I guess is a better way of saying it.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, Councillor Schmidt-Rempel.
Just a follow-up question to that, to Mr. Matthews. CC 41 and CC 42, how many cycles did we wait that we did not have any applications for before we decided to rescind this policy? Is there a best practice on that, or is that documented, how many cycles we wait?
Thank you for the question, Councillor Schmidt-Rempel. CC 41, the legislation has changed. We are no longer able to accomplish what that policy did. So that was upgrading to meet fire code. That's no longer eligible, and we exhausted all the funding that was available for that.
Okay.
So that policy is redundant. Protective plumbing program is a water and wastewater policy, so I don't actually know enough about that to speak about that.
I would be similar to that. So we could find that out for you and come back in regards to that. Just at this stage here, what I know is that, once again, that we haven't received the applications and that we haven't have that for multiple cycles.
Okay, and I'm just curious as to whether we document what those multiple cycles are and if there's a best practices that we follow before we rescind the policy, just to make sure we're applying that consistently throughout.
So I guess from our point of view on this one here, as we're looking through it, we would have had it in probably within our, obviously our discussion notes. I don't have my staff member here, just make sure I don't have my staff member here today to actually to provide that, but there would be. There is not a standard that I will say. This really comes down to the departments and how frequently they've seen it and whether or not, like Ms. Gehring had said on the previous one, whether or not the funding is there to actually continue it.
Okay, and so maybe if that query can be answered at a council meeting or
sure, we'll bring that back as an inquiry.
Query. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, and you have till January 21st if we need one, if you want it answered before it goes forward. And so any other questions? Doesn't look like it. All right, so we have a motion from Councillor Schmidt-Rempel. The floor is yours.
Nope, seeing no other questions from my colleagues, I would call for the vote on this.
Okay. I will be supporting this, one, because these have all been covered, and two, as we just did today, we can always create more policies if the provincial government changes their mind and wants to do something around secondary suites again or something. We can always find a way to support that going in the future. So the question's been called. All in favor? All right. So that one passes unanimously as a recommendation. And now we're on to 6.4, Government Relations and Advocacy Update. Now, if anybody has been reading this one, they may have wondered why everything seems past tense, but this was actually postponed from our October meeting, and so the report was done there. So we have that as information, and we also have a confidential attachment. I have a motion from Acting Mayor Carlson. Be it resolved that the Governance Standing Policy Committee recommend that Council, 1, receive the Government Relations and Advocacy Update as information, and 2, direct that the confidential attachment title Appendix 1 and any related closed meeting discussion remain confidential pursuant to Sections 21, harmful to intergovernmental relations, and 24, advice from officials of the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. Are there questions? Councillor Schmidt-Rempel, please go ahead.
Just a question to the city manager or your designate on this one. Will we see an update for 2025 and advocacy plans for there?
Mr. Gauthier, welcome.
Yeah, the answer to that is yes. Those plans or that work is underway right now, preparing for plans for 2025, and we anticipate being able to brief Governance SPC at your next regular meeting.
Perfect. Following up on that, there is the spring meeting of Alberta municipalities coming up in just a few months. Will that advocacy be able to be linked to that as you're working on it? Just something to consider as you're working on it?
Absolutely. That's something we would consider as part of our regular work, if there's any opportunities that would exist there.
I think there are some members of council who intend to be at that meeting, so just to keep that in mind as you're working on that. Okay. All right, perfect. Sure. Thank you very much. All right. Oh, Acting Mayor Carlson, you have a question? Just don't go away. It might be for you, Mr. Gauthier.
Yeah, it was actually. Thank you, Madam Chair. So we did have the confidential briefing. I believe it's one we've had on the books for the last couple of months. There was nothing we were going in camera. Sorry, through you to Mr. Gauthier, there's nothing you need to update us on or things we need to be working on at over the Christmas holidays?
No, there is no expectation of you doing any advocacy work over the Christmas holidays.
Woohoo!
Okay, that's Mr. Gauthier's expectation, not the rest of your colleagues' expectation. If you're at a party.
I don't go to parties.
If the committee wishes to go into closed, I'm happy to answer any other questions in there.
I don't think any motion is being put forward to go into close at this point. Thank you, Mr. Gauthier. All right, any other questions on the report? Okay, I don't see any. The motion is from you, Acting Mayor Carlson. If you have any motion you wish to make, or if you just want to call the question.
I will just call for the vote and thank you for the work.
Question has been called. All in favor? And that moves forward, recommended unanimously as well. Now, since we did 6.5 and 6.6 already, we're adjourned. Thank you all. This is, as I said, last committee meeting before Christmas, so everybody have an amazing holiday, and thank you all for your help with this.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Happy Christmas. Happy holidays.
I still have a meeting tomorrow, though, of Community Futures, so after that, I'll wish you a happy Christmas.
All right. I'll wait for it.
Merry Christmas. Happy New Year, everyone.
See you all.